I was struck up with 15 chapters. Interestingly, this book contains 31 chapters. So if you read one chapter within a month, we can read the entire book with a lot of inspiration and messages from this book. I discovered at least 4 important guiding principles within these 15 chapters, the first portion of the entire book. Four guiding principles. And interestingly, there are 4 sets of people involved in this one. Some are positive examples, some are negative examples. As I told you, there are 4 C. So we have 4G and 5G. This is only 4Z. In other words, there are 4 guiding principles with the first letter C. For lack of time, I divide into 2. Today, we will focus on 2 important principles or important lessons that we can take from this book, particularly within the 15 chapters. The first one, first to see, consecration. Consecration. Interestingly, the people on whom we are going to focus is Hannah and her little son, Samuel. As I told you, the word consecration. Consecration means setting aside from or set aside to. There are 2 aspects. One is something should be taken out of this world and it should be totally given to God. This is the meaning of this word. So sometime the translation could be holiness, sometime consecration. We take consecration. A person can be consecrated or a material can be consecrated. In other words, a person or a thing could be dedicated to God and God would take the ownership, and once it is given, he is going to be the master and the owner. And the person or the thing consecrated should be used only for God and no other purposes. This is the thing that we must remember when you think of this word consecration. Now, as I told you, our hero and heroine are Hannah the mother and little son Samuel. Let me read 2 verses which will give the beautiful explanation with regard to the consecration. Hannah was childless. She prayed. And in the verse 10, we read first chapter, 10th verse. And she made this vow, O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours. Underline this word. He will be yours for his entire lifetime. Verse 28 in the same chapter. Now, I'm going to, the first one was a prayer. Second one was the declaration before Eli the priest. When she was presenting the little son to God. Now I am presenting to the Lord. And little Samuel will belong to the Lord his whole life. Belong to the Lord whole life. Are we able to understand the importance of giving something to God, and that should become the property of God? Hannah presents Samuel to the Lord wholeheartedly. She did not have any grievance. Oh, I have made a big mistake of giving this vow to God. No, she wholeheartedly gave that son to God. Another important thing is that full-time or part-time is not mentioned here. Instead, another term, lifetime, is the matter. We learned in this one. Once dedicated, that person belonged to God, not partially, but fully. God becomes his master, and that person becomes God's servant lifetime. Consecrated person leaves behind or gives up his rights and privileges. This is the cost he has to pay in order to serve the Lord. So when he became a God's servant in this small age, he became the property of God. He had to lose so many privileges and rights as a little young boy. But he had to give, and the mother had to give the same thing. I think if my memory goes, in 1975, I was interested to buy a dictionary. I went to the old bookshop, and my college lecturer told that you must buy advanced learner dictionary by Oxford. So I was searching. Fortunately, I had one old copy of this dictionary, and I bought it. At that time, the cost 15 rupees, 1975. Most of you would not have been born. When I was very happy about it, one voice came and said, did you ask the permission from God? This is vibrating even now after 45 years. My dear children of God, when we become God's child, whether full-time or part-time or lifetime, that is immaterial, we belong to God. This is the part played by the mother and the son. Now, I take another side. God also has to play a part. You can see some of the examples from the scripture. There was one young boy called Jeremiah he turned out to be a prophet, about whom God told in Jeremiah 1:5, I know you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and appointed you as my prophet to the nations. When appointment is given, no, we have to present yourself before the employer. Another thing, the person has to see the person and see the merits of the person. But God says that before you were born, I have chosen and appointed you as a servant of God. This is really amazing. Another example in the life of John the Baptist, the angel Gabriel stood before um, John the Baptist's father, who was ministering in the temple of God. He said, he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. He was not born. Even the mother did not conceive the child. Both parents were barren, and they did not have the child. But the angel foresaw and told that he will be great in the eyes of the Lord. Galatians chapter 1:15. But even before I was born, God chose me and called me by his marvelous grace. This was the statement given by Paul when he was writing about various things. Suddenly he talked about the God's choice and God's call. I imagine like this. Maybe 50 AD, there was the birth of this man. And what could have happened in suddenly he called the angel, stop at the 99, stopped it. Here is a baby who is going to be John, Apostle Paul. He was not born, but Bible says that God chose. So this is called the sovereign will of God. My dear children of God, many things we select, but God choose certain things. We may understand or we may not understand. We they had to depart. 4 tears were falling down from the little son's face, and mother was crying. At that time, little son came and told like that, Mummy, all my friends are playing cricket. Mother could not answer, but she must have told one thing. My son, it may be right for other people to do, whereas you cannot do. After 1 year, he would have told that, oh, all my friends are watching Cartoon Network, whereas I am not allowed. The mother must have told that, oh, this may be applicable to others, whereas you are a consecrated son. You cannot do it, my son. As the both were going with tears, no, two angels must have come, Gabriel and Michael, and Gabriel told, Michael, look at this little boy. Time is going to come. He will become one of the greatest prophets. 2 books will be placed in the Bible in honor of this boy. 2 kings will be anointed by this man as kings. And they also left. What we see in this important thing is that consecration involves so much. You have to lose, and you have to set aside so many things. Then only you can be a property of God. You can belong to God, and you can call yourself some servant under a great master. Let me give 2 practical questions. Just listen. Do you thankfully acknowledge all things you possess belong to God? Above all, don't you know that you yourself are the treasured possession of our great God? Second question, are you sure that you will seek first the approval of your master in heaven for any decision you make, whether great or small? So first to say is consecration. Second one, a negative one, compromise. Compromise. The people involved in this particular thing is Eli and sons. About Eli, it is written, he was the priest in the tabernacle in Shiloh. And 4th chapter, 15th verse, we read, he was 90-year-old man and with blindness. And the 18th verse of the same 4th chapter, we read like that, he had been Israel's judge for 40 years. All great things about this man. Look at the sons. First chapter, verse 3, the names are mentioned here, Hophni and Phinehas. Now, first I take the sins of these 2 sons. After that, the sin of Eli. Must, as I told you, the sins of these 2 sons. To make it interesting, I have put the subheading like this. What is their sin? Happiness at the cost of holiness. Happiness at the cost of holiness. Chapter 2 and verse 12, we read like this. Chapter 2 and verse 12. Now the sons of Eli were scoundrels, in NIV, wicked, who had no respect for the Lord. Verse 17. So the sin of this young man was very serious in the Lord's sight, for they treated the Lord's offering with contempt. There are certain words for which let me take from the dictionary the meaning. First one, wicked, a very common word, but the dictionary says that wickedness means evil or morally wrong. Scoundrel, we normally don't use this word. Scoundrel, a rogue, or a dishonor or unscrupulous person. What do you mean by this word unscrupulous? For this also, dictionary gives the definition: no regard for what is no regard for what is evil or wrong, or he has no respect for good things. Another word is contempt, no respect for somebody or something. So he did not have any respect for God. My dear children of God, putting all together, I have found out two important sins of these people. These two men had no sense of God's fear in their life. Secondly, just for the sake of their own pleasure, they were deliberately doing what is evil or wrong. In single word, God excluded life. God excluded life. Ecclesiastes 12 and verses 13 and 14, the last chapter of this book and last two verses. This is the whole story. Here is now my final conclusion. Fear God and obey his commands, for this is everyone's duty, for God will judge us for everything we do, including every secret thing, whether good or bad. So, beautifully presented. So, no further explanation. Another verse that I want to quote is from Hebrew chapter 12, verses 16 and 17. 16 and 17 of 12th chapter of Hebrew. In NLT, make sure that no one is immoral or godless like Esau, who traded his birthright as firstborn for a single meal. Some may know that there is a beautiful translation called the Message. There is a person whose name is Eugene Peterson. He has translated or paraphrased the Bible just to make Americans to understand some of the biblical words, because they are not so familiar with biblical terms. It is good for you to download this app without any cost. Once again, I mentioned the title of the Bible, The Message by Eugene Peterson. Let me read the same verse in that translation. Watch out for Esau syndrome, trading away God's lifelong gift in order to satisfy the long-term appetite, short-term appetite. You will know how Esau later regretted that impulsive act and wanted God's blessing. But by then, it was too late. Tears or no tears. Here is a great model as a warning. What is that? Some of the spiritual blessings you may get, God might have given you, you can easily lose it. Once lost, you cannot get it back. Get it back. So with this words, we leave these two sons. Very sad thing is that they died in the battle in their young age, and God also told them that this would happen. Accordingly, both were killed. Now, the sin of Eli. This also, in order to make it interesting, I put the subheading like this: laxity in place of responsibility. Laxity in place of responsibility. Laxity means easygoing attitude. Here is Eli. Look at the way God was angrily bringing the complaint to the young boy Samuel. Chapter 2 and verse 19. So why do you scorn? This is a prophetic word by a prophet. So why do you scorn my sacrifices and offerings? Why do you give more honor than you give me? This is the way God was telling through the prophet. In the 3rd chapter, verse 9, his sons are blaspheming God, and he has not disciplined them. He has not disciplined them. Putting together what we understand, that Eli was the person who was who was leading a very peaceful life. Bible says that he used to sit near the gate, and throughout the day he would sit. People like him, Hannah, may come for prayer. That's all. And he did not do this. When God says that, oh, you have given more honor to me more honor to your son than me means that what are the evil deeds they were doing, he was not concerned about it. And he failed to correct these people. Martin Luther made a beautiful statement like this. It's a quotation. Evil prevails when good man does nothing. Evil prevails when good man does nothing. From this, two more things that we can learn as a beautiful lesson. Children of God, you may have the choice of decision making in your hand. Children of God, you may have the choice of decision making in your hands. But remember, God has the choice of its consequences in his hand. In other words, you may do certain things, but God will have to allow you to reap the consequence. In Galatians, we read like this: what you sow, that you will reap. Another important lesson is that to solve your problem, you should go back to the source of your problem and correct it, not in the middle. It may hurt you, but it gives you recovery permanently. For example, Abraham had 2 wives, but God had to send the Hagar, second wife, away from that place. What a painful thing it is. Ismail was the first son, but with a little food and a bottle, he had to send them away. Why? Because God wanted to erase the evil things that both Sarah and Abraham did it. It's a painful thing, but God allowed this man to reap that consequence. Finally, when we come to the um, end of this beautiful portion, the first portion, we see that ark was taken away from the temple of God and it was captured by the Philistines. Bible says that as soon as Eli heard this one, the ark was captured by the Philistine. He fell down and he died. And one of the sons' wife was giving delivery, and she gave a name to the son like this, Ikobat. That means glory has departed. Glory has departed. The lesson is that when we fail to give the due respect to the sovereign king in our life, in our family, in our church, or in our society, God leaves that place because he cannot take the second place. He deserves all the glory and he wants his people to honor him in everything. Putting all these things together, there are 2 things that we have learned today. Consecration. What is our consecration? What are the various areas we become independent? And what are the various things that may hurt our great God? As I conclude, today accidentally I was turning the Facebook. I come across my favorite author, Chuck Charles Swindoll. He has given a beautiful devotion, and one sentence really touched me. You may not be the chain, but you are a link in the chain. If you leave the chain cannot be a chain. It's a philosophical thought, but understand that you have a very special and specific role to play, but you cannot be independent. You need to be interdependent. Look at the chain. In a chain, every link is connected to another link, one side, another link, another side. So you are inseparably connected with other people. Together, the purpose of our life is to bring glory to God. Consecrate yourself. Secondly, beware of the sin as you live and serve the Lord. And God will account for each and everything. May God give us the grace that we should not bring anything that will bring dishonor or um, um, anything that may bring some bad things to our God. He has to be honored in our life. Ichabod should be a thing that should be away from our life, and may God give us the grace to live for Him, live for His glory. May God be glorified in our lives.